Under the yellow light of the early morning, a line of trucks carrying pigs entered the large gate of the vast factory, where white smoke from the steam system billowed up, signaling the start of a new working day. The heavy engine noise mixed with the squeals of the pigs packed tightly in the truck bed created a chaotic, fierce yet lively soundtrack. Opening the door to the huge chain of work inside, the automatic steel gate slowly opened, revealing a large yard like a military yard, where hundreds of workers in white protective uniforms, hats, and gloves stood in rows, ready to receive the new shipment. The siren sounded, resounding loudly. Everything started moving like a giant machine that had been wound up in advance. The workers quickly climbed into the truck bed. The iron door opened wide. Dozens of panicked pigs jumped down, their feet sliding on the cold, wet concrete floor, their eyes wide open, shining with fear. The sound of their footsteps, the urgent cries mixed with the shouts of the workers in charge, creating a rapid rhythm that made the whole space seem to shake. The sturdy iron fences were set up in advance. Each line of pigs was herded in. They jostled, butted each other, trying to find a way out, but in the end had to move forward towards the cold white light of the first processing area. Each worker on the line had a clear task. No one was extra, no one was missing. From the guide, the weight checker to the person recording the quantity, everything happened rhythmically, urgently, as if they had done this 1,000 times, turning the chaos into a choreographed dance. The factory loudspeaker rang out. A mechanical but decisive female voice. Shift begins. Safety check. Prepare to enter the process. Immediately, the white neon lights in the workshops turned on brightly, reflecting on the smooth ceramic tile floor. The large doors opened, revealing a world inside. Conveyor belts, hooks, gleaming blades, steam boilers, and giant cutting machines waiting to be operated. One by one, the pigs were herded through the narrow corridor, where workers stood on both sides watching. They squealed loudly, the sound echoing in the enclosed space like a drum, making the atmosphere even more tense. The sound of hard boots stomping on the floor mixed with the clanging of steel, all combining into a lively industrial symphony. When the pigs were brought to the anesthesia area, the machines began to operate. The hum of electric motors rang out, a cold, emotionless sound, in stark contrast to the chaotic life outside. The workers operated skillfully, each movement precise to the second. Their eyes were glued to the process, not hesitating, because even the slightest mistake could cause an accident. Immediately after, the slaughter line started. The pigs were hung up by shiny steel hooks. Their bodies vibrated, then gradually became still. The air was thick, but the work did not stop for even a moment. Everything continued to move, like a giant, irreversible flow. After completing the first step, the pig bodies were transferred to the preliminary processing area. The sound of blades hitting bones, the solid sound of cutting, the ear-piercing screech of saws, all mixed with the sound of fans, the clattering of conveyor belts, the smell of fresh meat, the smell of iron and steel, the smell of hot steam rose up, filling the space. The workers worked on the assembly line, step by step, without stopping. Some cut, some clean, some divide. Everyone worked with fast speed and high concentration. Their white gloves were stained with red blood. Their eyes did not waver, only the cold proficiency of an industrial machine remained. Each piece of meat is classified: shoulder, rib, belly. Each piece is put on an electronic scale to measure the exact weight. Immediately after that, they are taken straight to the packaging area, where modern machines operate continuously to pack each piece of meat into vacuum packaging. The sound of the press machine hisses, the sound of plastic rolls rolling evenly, then the finished products pour out continuously, stacked on top of each other like red bricks. The whole factory is like a giant heart beating, a strong and unceasing beat, transmitting energy through every corridor, every office. Workers run along the lines, eyes darting, hands moving quickly, always ready to adjust. Error alarms and safety warnings ring continuously, but they do not make them flinch. On the contrary, the atmosphere becomes more tense, urgent, urging every heartbeat, every breath. And then, when the final product is transferred to the giant cold storage, where the temperature drops to almost zero, the air seems to stop for a moment. Each pallet of goods is neatly stacked. Each box of fresh red meat is carefully sealed, ready for the journey to market. Workers take off their gloves, wipe their sweat, their eyes still shining with pride. They know that behind the loud sounds, the chaotic smells and the tense rhythm, is the result of a long day of work. The products. Clean, safe pork is waiting to be delivered to millions of families. Footsteps echoed endlessly on the cold cement floor, each sound like a drumbeat urging, making the atmosphere in the factory always as tense as a bowstring. A series of workers entered the sorting area, where the neon lights reflected on the shiny stainless steel conveyor belts, flashing each ray of light like lightning. Each pair of hands moved continuously, like a dance practiced to perfection. There was no time to stop, no room for hesitation, only a steady, precise, and urgent rhythm. The red-pink chunks of meat were cut, the bones making a clicking sound every time the blade touched them. The white fat mixed with the soft lean meat creating a clear contrast. The workers stood close together, each holding a shiny knife tightly, the steel flashing continuously like swords in battle. The sound of knives hitting the cutting board resounded, mixed with the ear-piercing sound of electric saws, making the whole space feel like a giant industrial orchestra performing. The pungent smell of blood mixed with the smell of steel and disinfectant, seeping through each layer of mask, making everyone's breathing heavy, but no one stopped. They were too familiar with this rhythm, too familiar with the harshness of the job while still keeping their hands precise to every cut. In another corner, the workers in charge of hygiene and labor safety kept moving, They sprayed disinfectant on the floor, wiped away every trace of blood. Every drop of water splashed from the conveyor belt, to ensure everything was always shiny and sterile. The sound of high-pressure water jets reverberated. The screeching sound of scrubbing mixed with the sound of cartwheels screeching on the tiled floor. The rhythm never stopped. One pig after another, one crate after another, as if the outside world did not exist, leaving only the endless rotation of the giant factory. The pig bodies hanging on steel hooks along the overhead rails were moved to the next area. Each hook shook and creaked, the cold sound echoing in the vast space. Under the bright white light, the workers stood ready, the blades in their hands, eager to continue the familiar dance of blood and steel. In just a few seconds, each pig body was separated into many parts, neatly stacked on the conveyor belt like lifeless blocks of goods. The hurried, urgent atmosphere made each moment seem to drag on, but the conveyor belt kept rolling, still steadily moving each batch of goods forward. In the packaging area, another space appeared, where giant machines dominated. The sound of vacuum sealers hummed. The sound of plastic rolls rustled. Each piece of meat was placed in transparent packaging. All the air was sucked out and sealed, looking shiny, neat, ready for distribution. The workers standing nearby just had to check and put the products into cartons printed with the factory logo. The sound of tape sealing the boxes was pulled long. The sound of boxes being stacked on top of each other resounded throughout the room. From afar, the entire production line looked like a red flood, flowing continuously and without stopping. In the cold storage, the temperature dropped, turning the breath into white smoke. The workers, wearing thick coats and cold-proof gloves, did not slow down the pace. They loaded the boxes onto the forklifts and placed them on each steel shelf that reached the ceiling. The growling sound of the forklift engine and the screeching sound of wooden pallets on the floor all blended together to create a cold but powerful sound picture. Each gust of cold air blew through, bringing a shiver, but the workers' eyes still lit up fiercely, because they knew that if they were even a little slower, the entire production line would be affected. Outside, the refrigerated container truck was waiting, the engine running steadily, the chimney blowing out white steam in the morning. When the warehouse door opened, the cold air rushed out like a cold wind. The boxes were loaded onto the truck, stacked neatly, locked, and sealed. Every time the container door slammed shut, another shipment left the factory, carrying the fruits of a long day's labor of hundreds of people. But the cycle didn't stop there. As soon as one shipment left, a new truck carrying pigs entered. The long whistle sounded again, echoing throughout the space, signaling the beginning of a new cycle. Workers rushed out into the yard again. Pigs were herded down again, and the assembly line began to move again. No one complained, no one slowed down, because they knew that this job did not allow for rest. Breathing was heavy, sweat streamed down under the protective gear, but the vibrant rhythm continued, endlessly, like the heartbeat of a giant industrial monster. The sound spread throughout the steel corridor, where the fluorescent lights still burned brightly regardless of day or night. The space seemed to swallow everything, leaving only the hum of the engine, the incessant clattering of the conveyor system, and the sound of workers panting under their thick masks. On the floor, traces of cleaning water mixed with the cold air from the air conditioning system created a thin layer of mist, sliding gently under the workers' feet. But their steps were still decisive, strong, and unwavering. A young worker, his eyes bright behind his protective glasses, stood by the sorting table. He held a black-handled knife in his hand, the blade so sharp that even a slight swipe would cause the meat to split like torn paper. His cutting rhythm was steady, swish swish, swish swish, blending with the rhythm of the knives of the people standing next to him, creating an orchestra of steel blades. The sound echoed off the metal walls, echoing like a war drum, making the listener's heart beat faster as well. Every time the steel flashed, his eyes would shine brightly, so focused that nothing could distract him. Behind him, another female worker quickly swept away the leftover scraps, putting them in separate trays, keeping everything up to the standard of cleanliness and order. The clanging of metal trays mixed with the chaotic sounds, but it felt like a steady rhythm in the industrial symphony. On the other side, a group of workers were pushing heavy pig carcasses hanging from hooks down from the high rails. The sound of the iron rails grinding, the sound of the chains vibrating, was chilling. Each pig carcass weighed dozens of kilograms, but they moved them at an astonishingly fast speed, as if the weight was no longer a burden but just a familiar part of the day. Daily work rhythm. They shouted, calling each other with short syllables, their voices echoing over the noise of the machines but still enough for the whole team to understand each other immediately. Above, the disinfection misting system emitted white mist, clinging to the protective suits and transparent plastic hats, making the whole room seem to be immersed in a hazy smoke. But behind that haziness, every human movement was still clear, decisive. And strong, like warriors fighting in a cold battlefield of steel and blood. Entering the fine cutting area, the atmosphere changed again. The sound of sharp knives was replaced by the ear-piercing sound of electric saws. Each cut whistling through bones made a dry, creepy sound. The broken pieces of bone flew everywhere, scattered, and were immediately collected by the system to avoid scattering. The workers operating the machine had to stand firmly, their hands holding firmly, their eyes absolutely focused. Light flashed from the rapidly rotating saw blades, reflecting sparks in the white space. That whistling sound was not pleasant, but it was their familiar rhythm, a rhythm that without it, the whole production line would become empty. In a further corner, another group was dividing the meat into standardized portions. The electronic scale beeped every time it reached the weight. The electronic pen scanned the barcode quickly, signaling that each portion of meat had been entered into the management system. Each block of bright red meat, mixed with white fat, was neatly arranged, then transferred straight to the packaging machine. The workers here did not need knives, just skillful hands and sharp eyes, ensuring that every piece of meat was round and not misshapen. The atmosphere was as lively as a market. But instead of the sound of bargaining, there was the sound of machines, the sound of workers shouting orders, the sound of metal colliding. All of this created a chord that never stopped. From dawn until sunset. In the hallway outside, the smell of hot steam from the steamer spread, rising into wisps of white smoke, covering the entire area. The hissing sound from the pressure valve, the whistling sound from the steam pipe, the roaring sound of the steam engine like the breathing of a giant monster. The workers walked through the white mist, their